God bless America. God has blessed America. We are proud Americans. We're Welcome in episode 21, Men Above Reproach podcast. We got a great one on the docket. We're coming off a great 4th of July weekend celebrating 250 years of American freedom. We are proud Americans. Yes, sir. And this episode lines up great because we did some in-depth study and reading on 3 different American heroes of history, and we're going to dive in deep to that. But yeah, we're just pumped for this conversation for America's 250th anniversary. Before we get into our discussion, let's dive into some scripture as we always do. And I'm going to do this off memory. So this is my verse of the year, and it's steadfast. And I just picked this because we needed one. And I think of these guys that we're going to be talking about, and they had to be steadfast in everything they did. So the verse is 1 Corinthians 15:58. It says, "Therefore, beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, because in the Lord your labor is not in vain." And that's a lot of times these guys probably felt like their labor was in vain. As Christians, sometimes we feel like our labor is in vain. Ultimately, if it is the work of the Lord, it is never in vain. I don't know exactly if the guys we're all talking about are Christians or not, but nonetheless, that can be our work, cannot be in vain. As for a discussion, we're each going to talk about who we covered, why we chose them, and then we're going to go through what did they accomplish and what they're most known for, what were some of their main challenges or maybe their main opponents or oppositions, and then how these individual people impacted us. So first off, we'll go down the line. Ty, who did you choose and why did you choose them?
So I chose to do Theodore Teddy Roosevelt, one of the greatest presidents in history. And why? Well, because I just thought he was a man. He's just a man's man, and I wanted to study it. And that's something we need more of today, especially men above reproach.
We need more manly men above reproach. I like it.
That's it. I think so.
What's up, Tech?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I picked John Hancock. And the reason why was because I wanted to study a founding father who is lesser known. If you say George Washington, Sam Adams, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, everybody knows those names. John Hancock isn't as widely recognized, not as familiar. So wanted to learn about him.
And I chose Booker T. Washington, and I've read his book like a year ago, and I wanted to reread it. And it has the book Up From Slavery. So he came out of slavery. He was young around the time of slaves becoming free, and I just wanted to restudy him because his mindset is just amazing. His go after it, get after it, make no excuses is so inspiring to me. And I've read like a lot of different people, and like this dude, I'm like, this guy is like my favorite person besides Jesus, which is a pretty crazy thing. So I'm excited to talk about him, and hopefully you guys are inspired to learn more about him, and probably these other guys we're going to talk about too. And also if there's other context, like period of time. So Ty, do you know when Teddy, like his time period in the USA off the top of your mind? Otherwise we have Google.
Well, when he first became president, it was 1901. He was vice president under President William McKinley, who was shot and assassinated and died 8 days later, making Teddy president.
So like right around the 1900 is like when he was probably most prominent, is what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, he was governor first of New York, just newly elected governor, but he was well known because he was head of like a police organization there and really cracked down on crime, but not only crime, on the bribery and corruption from like the police officers and local elected officials. He didn't really care who it was, his side or not. He thought rules are rules, and for anything to be successful, you had to have rules and enforce those rules. So he didn't care, but many in the Republican Party didn't like how he rocked the boat, much like Trump today. Trump was not liked by the Republican Party early on when he first announced. There's the traditional Republicans like John Kasich and Paul Ryan and Scott Walker and Ted Cruz. But he came in like a bowl in a china shop, and people didn't like how they did. And so Teddy Roosevelt was very similar. So right after he became governor, the leaders of the Republican Party thought, let's just make him vice president so we can have a different governor, because vice president back then was not a powerful position. It was kind of where your political career went to die. If no one valued it, you had no role and it didn't matter. And so he didn't even really want it because that he knew that, but it was just too close of an opportunity to the White House to pass up. So that's how it happened.
Okay. I'll quick before Grant tells like when his person lived. Booker T. Washington is 1856 to 1915, and his prominence, I don't know, his prominence was probably 20 on. But what's really cool is Booker T and Teddy actually have a pretty overlapped career. I don't know if we'll get into that conversation, but there's actually a whole book on Booker T and Teddy Roosevelt, just how they intertwined in their careers. So that's pretty cool. But
I was going to say that when we were off air, but I wanted to save it for the episode. So yeah, maybe we'll get into it a little bit more once we get deeper into the episode.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting what you heard from your side and what I learned from my side in the different podcasts and books I read on it. Grant, do you remember like John Hancock?
Yep.
What was kind of his life around?
John Hancock lived from 1737 to 1793. Died at the age of 56. Yep.
Oh, 56. Dang.
Yeah.
Okay, so we kind of have different ages. I would say Hancock, and then Booker T, and then Roosevelt. Do you know when Roosevelt died? How old he was?
Not sure when he died, but he became president at the age of 42, so pretty young.
Oh yeah, younger.
Actually, at that time, he was the youngest president in history.
Let's see. Died 1919. Okay, really? No, yeah. Teddy and Booker T almost have the exact same. So they must have been side by side and looking at each other's career this whole time. That's fascinating. All right. Well, Ty, hit us with it. I know this is a lot, but if you can boil it down, what did Teddy accomplish? What are they known for besides being president of the United States?
Well, we'll start with he came from a privileged family, so he was born into wealth. Again, there's a lot of parallels with Trump that I've noticed when I studied him. But one of the biggest things that was kind of unique about him was he was very curious and open to learning new things from new people. So he was born into a wealthy family in New York. His dad was very well-known businessman. He went to Harvard, but he really wanted to fight. He wanted to be a hard worker and a gritty kind of man. And so he was a part of like the boxing club and that sort of thing. And you've seen like famous pictures or sketches of him like with boxing gloves on. And then one of the turning points in his life was when his wife, he was a young elected official in New York, and his wife gave birth to their baby and was sick and dying from complications from the birth. And right at the same time, his mother came over or down there to take care of his wife. And so they were both at home in, I want to say Georgia or Florida. And he had to go from New York all the way down there. So he took a train, and he got there. And the day he got there, his wife died. And then within the hour, his mom died on the same day. And so he just basically, he completely lost hope in life and in everything. And he moved to the Dakotas to just become like a ranch hand. He wanted to just become someone completely different, like explore. He found some solace and peace in the outdoors. And that's really the only thing that made him like feel okay at that time in his life. So that's what got him out there. And he didn't want to take like any shortcuts at all, but he was kind of playing cowboy at first. He had very nice, boots and jeans and the cowboy giddy up, all of the stuff, which so was kind of made fun of by the other guys because they were legit and he just had all this nice stuff on. But he didn't take any shortcuts. He wanted to learn how to do everything the right way, and eventually did. He became a legit rancher and getting into bar fights and stuff like that. Everything that happened that was a norm out there, he became a norm for him, which wouldn't have been the way that things were handled or done, on the East Coast where he was from. And long story short is he moved back, worked his way up the political career, and ended up becoming governor. But basically everywhere he went, he was very strong in his convictions, and he would make a lot of enemies and then a lot of friends. He would make adjustments, learning how to communicate politically. But one of his biggest assets was really being able to befriend journalists. And so he could really control the press and get the people on his side, even if colleagues weren't. But then that kind of forced them to have to be. So he learned how to manage political acumen, or his political acumen got good in that way. And then ran for governor, won that race. And like I said, the Republicans at that time didn't love him. And so they said, let's just get him to run on McKinley's campaign and put him as vice president, because it's where your political career goes to die. And they got a separate guy in as governor. And then he ran with McKinley and had hundreds of thousands of people coming to listen to his speeches, because he was very charismatic in that way. And similar again, like Trump today, very grassroots oriented. And then McKinley won. And one part that I skipped over that's kind of important was in McKinley's first term when he was president, Teddy Roosevelt was assistant secretary of the Navy. And the secretary of the Navy was basically always on vacation and he like down in the Florida Keys or something. And he convinced him, like, the weather is so bad here, there's no reason for you to come back. These are the letters he would send to him, so he could have complete control over what was happening in that department. And he really wanted to go to war. And so this Spanish-American War is what, long story short, that came to, and he resigned his position because he wanted to fight on the front lines. He created this group called the Rough Riders. They were like former football players at Harvard and like wrestling team, and then the ranchers and farmers and everyone he knew from the Dakotas and Montana. And so he got them together, had sort of a tryout, became their leader, but was second in command. And that was one thing that he doesn't always get credit for, because he's viewed as kind of egotistical in his pursuits, but he knew when he wasn't the best at something, and he would appoint himself like second and get the best person to be first. So it'd be like colonel and he'd be lieutenant colonel, and but got to lead these men. And then he fought on the front lines and in very serious battles where he would charge on a horse in front of everyone else with virtually no fear. And they overran the Spanish on a very important mission that led to us winning the war. And he came back a war hero. And that helped. That's when he then ran for governor, because he had such a great name recognition and everything. And then whenever he decided he became president, because William McKinley was assassinated. And some of the major things that he accomplished in this time were really one of the biggest ones. The first thing he did the same day he became president, I believe, or within a day, was meet with Booker T. Washington. And not only did he meet with him, It was a meeting that was scheduled, but he chose to have dinner with him, which was considered extremely taboo and against, social norms, and frowned upon for a white man to have dinner with a black man at that time. Meeting and stuff is one thing, but to sit down and have dinner nonetheless with the president of the United States. And so he was vital to continuing the civil rights movement with Booker T. Washington, but also he didn't always do what he wanted. He still had to balance. There was racial discrimination that he had to deal with and differences, but also kind of class discrimination and class differences that he was trying to deal with. So he really went after like J.P. Morgan and the Rockefellers. He was completely for capitalism, but very against crony capitalism. So he broke up monopolies, and he did fight for like the working man as well. But one of the biggest things he did was recognize the importance of the Panama Canal. And so the Panama Canal at that time was, as you can imagine, one of the biggest intercontinental e-commerce and trade opportunities. And we were just growing into a world power. But Teddy Roosevelt thought he embodied like the American spirit, and he wanted to make sure we were a world power. And so he thought we needed to have the Panama Canal. The French tried to create this canal 10 to 15 years before, and it was just a mess. So there's like construction and debris and whatever. At that time, Panama was not its own sovereign nation. It was a Colombia, and he worked out a trade or a treaty with Colombia to have it. And then they, eventually just said, no, we don't want to do it. And it made him super mad. And the people of Panama, the Panamese, which I don't know if that's what they were called at that time or not, but they basically they didn't like the Colombian government and wanted their own nation. And so every few years there'd be an uprising, but it wouldn't lead to anything. But they went to Teddy Roosevelt and said, we're going to do another one soon. And as a young country in need of a lot of money, we would be happy to sell the Panama Canal. And it was like a wink and a nod kind of thing. And he's like, well, we stay out of, international issues with other countries, but I hope things kind of work out for you, wink and a nod. And then it happened, and he made sure that the authorities from the Colombian government could not get to this uprising. And Panama declared that they were a sovereign nation. And then within the hour, Teddy Roosevelt said, Panama's a sovereign nation. We recognize them as a sovereign nation. And then they offered to buy the Panama Canal. And then they sold it to him, wrote the treaty, all within like the hour. And so he made that amazing.
That's a quick real estate deal right there. That's a big one.
Absolutely. We got to take notes from him. So I'll leave it at that. He had several challenges between his family dying and, but one and kind of coming from like a position of wealth, but always had the mindset of like, you do give back and you care for like the working class people. And he made himself almost really become one of them too. And then with aspirations in politics, not really having like the Republican Party's support much of the time was a challenge in itself, but he was just a man of the people.
Love that.
Yeah.
I probably went over time, but
I don't know. Yeah, we probably should have had a clock going, but yeah, I thought it was just interesting to contrast. I'm not going to go too much into it, but contrast Teddy and Booker, just like they're such different upbringings, like affluent Northerner, slave in the South, but like they both just wanted to learn and grow, and that's how they connected. They had that connection. And I actually think they were supposed to meet where Teddy was going to go down to the University of Tuskegee in the South where Teddy was, or where Booker was, but that's when the assassination happened. He's like, hey, I can't come meet, I am now president. I think like, that's fair to reschedule that. The assassination happened. But there was the big uproar over that dinner you were talking about, because it wasn't the first time there was a black person in the White House. It was the first time that a black person dined with the president. And again, that's like Teddy's like, I'm going to do what I want to do, right? And this is the right thing to do, right? I'm going to learn from Booker T. But then he realized, I need to play politics still. Not everyone's on the same wavelength. So that just had to be so challenging.
Yeah, it was fascinating. And something I failed to mention was, like many people though, his idol was President Lincoln. And in fact, I was telling Grant this on the phone the other day. There's this famous picture that was taken of when Lincoln's body was going down the street in what do you call it?
Come a little closer to the mic.
When there's like an assassination of a president and the hearse is going down the street and the procession. Thank you. That up in the corner of an apartment building is actually Teddy Roosevelt and his younger brother. So you can see them as little kids in this famous picture.
Whoa.
That's of, yeah.
That is so crazy.
And they would move on, or he would move on to become president. But he really admired Lincoln, and much of the policies he created, which were very, had a lot of contention at that time, came from inspiration from the things that Lincoln did that were not of the norm. And so, yeah, meeting and having dinner with Booker T. Washington was one of those things too.
So what I kind of took away from him was maybe have the social skills, the social network of a upper class person, have the work ethic and grit of maybe a middle class person. And then
I should have just said that.
Yeah, I thought it was funny where he's like, I thought of him as a historical adrenaline junkie. He's like, I don't need bungee jumping. I'm just going to start a war and go to the front of the line. That'll get my adrenaline going.
It's exactly It's exactly what he did.
Isn't Teddy Roosevelt, Ty, isn't he most famous for starting the national park system here in America?
That's one of the things he's famous for is the conservation aspect of it, because he really valued like wildlife and natural parks. And again, that played a huge role in his recovery from just being in a extreme depression after his family died. So he was out there, like I said, in the Dakotas and stuff. And so yes, he valued that a ton.
So all of our national parks and their conservation, we can attribute that and give thanks to Theodore Roosevelt and his contribution to that.
Yep.
Cool.
Grant, let's hit us with your man.
Yeah, John Hancock, great American patriot. He was the son and the grandson of pastors. So his grandpa was a pastor. His dad was a pastor. His dad originally thought he was going to train him to become a pastor. Well, when he was 8, his aunt and uncle, was a very successful businessman in Boston, very successful, wealthy merchant, and he saw a lot of potential in young John Hancock. And so he approached his dad and his mom and said, "Hey, I think I can mentor him and really train him to be very successful. He's got he believed in John Hancock, and he thought he could be very successful." And his parents thought, "Okay, we think this is what's best for John." So at the age of 8, his aunt and uncle basically adopted him and moved him to Boston. And he was under the training of his uncle for many years, and he inherited a very profitable business from his uncle, basically with merchants and ships and selling whale oil and doing trades with England and Great Britain. And so basically took over the House of Hancock business in Boston. And so through that, he became insanely wealthy. He was one of the wealthiest men in the colonial era in the 13 states. And we know him now for his most flamboyant, most clear and concise and large font, right? Large autograph. The first signer of the Declaration of Independence, John Hancock, and his name is synonymous for signature and autographs in our era today. So pretty neat. He was the first signer of the Declaration of Independence, right front and center. You can see that. According to legend, he signed it that large so that King George III would be able to read it without his reading glasses. So that's what the legend says. Is it true or not? I don't know, but he signed his autograph that large anywhere. So it was always that same size, same clear font autograph. So, but it's kind of cool. It's kind of like a big, cool to think about that. He was confident, and he wanted. He was signing over his life and his fortunes and his sacred honor when he signed that. But anyway, he was also the first and third governor of the state of Massachusetts. He is one of the lesser known founding fathers because not much was written about him. And that's kind of one of the challenges faced with him is he left very little in personal writings. And for historians to use in interpreting in his life. That's why we all should be journaling every day. Anyway, but most depictions on him have relied on writings of his political opponents, who are often highly critical of him, and he's often been misrepresented. But I think just in learning about him, the book I read was called John Hancock by Willard Stern Randall, and it was just cool to really get to know his life well. And he was also the longest serving president of the Continental Congress. He began his political career as a protege of Samuel Adams, and then after a while, their relationship got pretty strained. And then it was once after John Hancock passed away, there's a lot. Sam Adams did end up towards the end of his life. His life, they actually kind of restored that relationship, which was pretty cool. He did have some. I'll include this as well. Some of the issues he faced. He had a lot of health issues. He had a lot of problems with gout, severe pain and swelling in more than one joints. There were many times where he was bedridden, couldn't move. He was in such pain. And when he was in pain, he couldn't. They had to travel by carriage back then, and those rough, rocky roads made the pain even that much worse. So he struggled with that, had to face that a lot, and it took a while to recover. And obviously, they didn't have modern medicine back then. So let's see. So he struggled with that. His son died at the age of 8. Went out to skate on a wintry day and fell and hit his head on the ice and died 3 days later. So that was a really hard thing that he faced, and his wife, that was their only son. And so after that, he really threw himself into politics and into just getting the country started. And I want to read just 3 quick paragraphs from this book that I think were just very impactful to me. And it's kind of towards the end of his life. And it's right during the Constitutional Convention. The founding fathers realized that the Articles of Confederation were not good enough for the future of the country. And they knew they needed a new document, a new government. And so it says here, I want to read this. It's towards the end of his life, actually. And they're at the Constitutional Convention in 1787. He actually passed away 6 years later. But it started in May, and they're not making much progress. They're having a lot of debate and arguments raging on back and forth. And let's see. It says here, while the debate raged in the convention, in newspaper essays, Hancock remained on Beacon Hill, where he lived, watching, waiting, and studying reports he ordered sent to him daily by both camps. He understood that Massachusetts, as the initiator and first leader of the revolution, was being watched closely, its decision promising to influence other states. So then he's in the midst of another flare of gout. He's at home. He's listening for reports, and he decides, I got to go in. And he makes the trip to give his speech. As the last speaker, Hancock rose to address a silent hall and began. I should have considered it as one of the most distressing misfortunes of my life to be deprived of giving my aid and support to a system which, if amended, as I feel assured it will be, according to your proposals, cannot fail to give the people of the United States a greater degree of political freedom and eventually as much national dignity as falls to the lot of any nation on the earth. Later, he then says, in the same, this is his finest hour, okay? He's giving his speech because he was well liked. He was generous. He was benevolent. Everybody knew him. Okay, so people were listening. He then says, "I give my assent to the Constitution in full confidence that the amendments proposed will soon become a part of the system. These amendments being in no wise local, but calculated to give security and ease alike to all the states. I think that all will agree to them." So the problem was the founding fathers were arguing, debating. The Bill of Rights hadn't come into place yet. This was just strictly the Constitution. And some of the people like Patrick Henry, some of the delegates were very concerned that this was just going to be just like Parliament, just like Britain. They were frustrated. They was like, we didn't come all the way this way to win a revolutionary war. just to install the same system we faced in Parliament that limited our rights, that gave us no freedom, and that's why we left. Okay, so then he says his last two paragraphs here. It's just fantastic. The people of this Commonwealth are a people of great light. John Hancock saying this about Americans, of great intelligence in public business. They know that we have none of us an interest separate from theirs, that it must be our happiness to conduce to theirs, and that we must all rise or fall together. They will never, therefore, forsake the first principle of society, that of being governed by the voice of the majority. And should it be that the proposed form of government should be rejected, they will zealously attempt another. Should it, by the vote now to be taken, be ratified, they will quietly acquiesce, and where they see a want of perfection in it, endeavor in a constitutional way to have it amended. The question now before you is such as no nation on earth, without the limits of America, has ever had the privilege of deciding upon. As the supreme ruler of the universe has seen fit to bestow upon us this glorious opportunity, let us decide upon it, appealing to him for the rectitude of our intentions, and in humble confidence that he will yet continue to bless and save our country. Man, when I read that, I got chills. I mean,
let's go.
I wanted to share that because I just think it's amazing that this is his finest hour. He's speaking to these delegates, and this is the only place in the book where God is mentioned, basically. The divine providence, the supreme ruler. He encouraged the men there, like, hey, we didn't come this far. We asked the Lord for help in the Revolutionary War, and you can read. I think Sam Adams is also quoted as saying, "Hey, we're struggling here. We got it. Where do we need to go? We need to go to the Lord for help and get on our knees in prayer." And I just think it's really neat. I don't know where he was at in his relationship with God. I'm not sure, but here, when it really mattered, he knew who the ultimate help was and where the ultimate source of strength and provision comes from, and that's divine providence in God. So I just thought that was a really neat speech, and probably my favorite part of the book. But yeah, he wasn't without problems. He was a human just like us, and Sam Adams didn't like him. There was some contention between him and Sam for a long time because Sam thought he used his wealth for sort of gain, if you will, to get be well liked in the public eye. But the fact of the matter, he was very generous. He cared about our country, and he gave so much to it, and it gave a lot of his wealth away. And so I just thought this was a really. And then after that, it says Hancock's sense of the gravity of the moment only enhanced his statesman-like eloquence. As soon as he finished, Samuel Adams leapt to the podium and declared his support for Hancock's conciliatory proposals. So that's a little bit about John Hancock. And I thought you guys would enjoy hearing that.
Oh yeah, gets me hyped. What time is it? It's like 9:30 p.m. Oh, it's 10 p.m. I'm about to go sprint outside. Give me a quick lap around the neighborhood.
I know, right? I read that and I was like, man, I'm fired up.
Yeah, when I hear these, well, let me go real quick. I was like, to be a part of these moments, like there's moments in countries and people
100%.
in societies, like that is such a pivotal moment. Like, I don't know if we in our own lives will have such a decisive and consequential moment that impacts so many people. Just to be a part of that it's just like a spectator, and to be a part of that in history,
unbelievable,
insane. And then like anyone that doesn't maybe appreciate the Constitution, the founding fathers, again, there's all these issues, but like how much work they put in, how much deliberation, how much they cared, how much they sacrificed. The more you study it, you're just like, oh my gosh, my life is so easy.
It's mind-blowing, Levi, to think what these guys did. And, you know, winning the Revolutionary War was one thing. It was hard. But I'll tell you what, I bet you if you were to talk to any of these guys now, they would tell you starting the country was even
oh my goodness,
beyond hard, was crazy hard. It wasn't even close. And so to be able to get everybody going in that they had their differences religious wise, but to be able to agree on, hey, we need to have the freedom, the Bill of Rights, right? The first 10 amendments. That's what we're going to agree on. You know, that's what we can get everybody pulling in the same direction with. It's amazing. It's a miracle.
Yes.
Yeah. I was going to say a couple things. One, it is truly divine intervention that we have the country we have today, because it's divine intervention what they were able to create in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
Mhm.
It is incredible. And the fact that people disagree with the that we were built on Christian values as a Christian nation and that our founding fathers are Christian is crazy with all the evidence that there is. One being what you just went through. Two, this verse, Isaiah 33:22, which states, "For the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, the Lord is our king. He will save us." So I wonder where they got the idea that the Lord is our judge. Okay, what's a judge? The judicial branch. The Lord is a lawgiver. Who makes laws? Congress. The Lord is our king. Who's virtually the king of our country? The president. And the structure that we have, but yet the people still have the power, is incredible. Built from Christian values on scripture as a Christian nation.
Yeah, they
And then
recognize
the other
that our rights are from God, not from government.
Amen. That these people who did that were ages 18, 20,
Another
20,
great point.
21, 25,
It's wild.
30, 30. Thomas Jefferson, 33.
It's unbelievable.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. The founding
Unbelievable.
fathers, the maturity they had and the spiritual maturity that they had to have had to, like you said, Levi, like just be so committed to making this happen for the sake of our country. It's crazy.
All right, guys, we're done. No, I'm kidding. I was like, wrap it up. That's pretty good. Clap it up and wrap it up.
Hey, Booker T. Washington's cherry on top.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Well, yeah. So Booker T. Washington, as I said, he was born into slavery. He doesn't even know who his father is. He like out of everyone's upbringing, like anyone probably that we can think of, but everyone you guys have talked about, his is the toughest upbringing. He started from not even zero, probably negative, right? But what he was most known for his life was just always finding a way, just generally, but practically, he was the founder of the Tuskegee Institute, so a university in the South to help people, help Black people after they came out of slavery to like build a life, like starting from the dirt. Literally, he built this university from the dirt. And then he goes on to continue to just like form the next generation to be valuable contributors to society. That's huge. And then he was just an advisor to presidents. That's maybe what he's known for on a political side. He really didn't want to get into politics. Like he was a speaker. He was a well-known orator, traveled around the country to speak. And he was kind of he was just a guide for the Black community in America at this time, but he didn't want to be a politician because he's like, I think I can, and I would agree with him, I can do more for his race, he would say, trying to educate them and build value rather than to be politically active. And that's, I'll talk about the oppositions and the challenges, and that's where people differed. He's like, you need to be more politically active. He's like, no, I think I need to train them how to be contributing members of society and have very good skill sets and be hard workers and be really good at things that people value. So his biggest accomplishment is starting Tuskegee Institute. I need to look where that's at. I think it's Alabama, but
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Did he have any influence, Levi, quick question, on the Tuskegee Airmen? That was the first
yeah. So
flight in World War I, Black pilots.
Red Tails. Red Tails.
Yeah, that's it. Yes.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Tuskegee is Tuskegee, Alabama. Yes, the airmen do come from the university. In the books and podcasts I listened to, he didn't necessarily have like a direct impact, or maybe that's might have been after his era. But yes, that group comes from that university. I want to go visit this university now. That makes pretty sweet because again, listening to what he accomplished, it's just like I have no reason to complain. I have no reason to say I can't accomplish something, and it just makes you want to get up and get after it, and just like also raise like other leaders around you and to guide people. His conviction to get at like to do what he did was very impressive. Do you guys all know Jocko Willink and the extreme ownership.
Oh yeah.
I've been saying we've read his book. I would recommend read Up from Slavery. This is the original extreme ownership. And Jocko actually does like a 2.5 hour podcast talking about Booker T. And he's just like, man, this guy, like, he is me, but he is me in more so. To give you even a mindset of how he just didn't complain. He actually said, I definitely don't. So Booker T says, I could be misquoting this, but I don't agree with slavery by any means, but I'm also like glad it happened because I learned skills and I am tougher because of it. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like if there's anything anyone could ever complain about and be perfectly fine, it would be slavery. And he's like, I don't think it's a good thing, but I am actually thankful because I learned skills I wouldn't have otherwise. You're like, wow,
Right.
this
You gotta
dude
imagine. You have to
Oh,
imagine
my.
what he saw too. Like he was probably whipped, beaten, saw
Oh,
friends
my
or
God.
family or loved ones lynched, and tortured. Just the things like just atrocities, but to still try to find a positive for his growth and just to have that overall mindset is crazy.
Yeah.
This is all he actually says. I feel bad for the white man because they became dependent on us and they took advantage of us and that actually corrupted their morals. I was like, oh my goodness, that's super insightful. But like, what, you feel bad for the white man? I was like, dude, you are a different breed, and it shows. Like, as much as I would want to have his mindset of just never making excuses, always finding a way, and I want that for everyone, he was just a different breed, and that's why he was so influential, why he was able to accomplish it. So if we are able to have a mindset in our own lives, like for me personally, like again, my role model first and foremost is always Jesus Christ, but it's really cool when you can find someone closer in history or just a person that you've maybe rubbed shoulders with, which I did not with Booker T, but it's also fun to see other examples. And Booker T also was a Christian. He talks about Jesus Christ in his autobiography. And a lot of times when you're studying people and you're listening to other books and podcasts on him, you find something negative about him. There was no scandal. There was no infidelity. There was no stealing. There was no anything negative. People just disagreed with his philosophy on how he did things. So he actually never did anything wrong. It was just like a difference of opinions. I'm like, that's so hard to find someone like that in history. That's why I was like, he was upright to it like a T. He actually said, I will never say something in the North that I will not say in the South, and vice versa. He's like, what I will say to a white man, I will say to a black man. I will say the same thing regardless. I'm like, that had to be so challenging, but he's like, these are my standards and these are what I'm going to say regardless. And actually that leads me to maybe one other thing he was well known for. He was very well known for kind of being, this isn't the right word, but like a liaison for black people and white people at this time. Like, how can we bridge this? And again, the people didn't always agree with how he did that, but he spoke to he's like, white people, this is what you want. Black people, this is what you want. I think you guys can accomplish it this way. It's not necessarily the easiest way, but I think it's actually the most sustainable and lasting way. And ultimately that way was white people, you still want them to be contributing members of society. You want them to be brick makers and the best cooks and construction workers. Black people, you might not want to go into the labors and that type of work because you just came from slavery. I totally understand that, but ultimately you have those skills. Be the best at those skills, and they're gonna pay you for it. And once you are you have money and you're a taxpayer, you're in a whole different. They're gonna view you differently. They're not gonna view you as, well, they probably still did, unfortunately, but it's like they're going to view you more highly because you're contributing. You have money, you have skill set. Like ultimately, we're all selfish humans, and what we want is, how are you going to serve me? How are you going to help me? And he realized, like, see what you can actually contribute, and that'll help advance you throughout society. Which, for better or for worse, like people might not agree with that, but it was really cool to hear just how he guided people through that philosophy.
We could all learn something from Booker T. Washington. I love the ownership he took. You
guys should listen to his book though, for sure.
Didn't complain about his situation, but made the most of it.
shout it out so
Yeah.
the viewers, listeners can
So
look it up too.
you can get it on library apps. I listened to it. It's called Up from Slavery. And then he had another book, if you want to even dive deeper, and I listened to this one called The Future of the American Negro. So he's actually talking to them, hey, this is your best path forward. Yeah. And then if you do like to hear there's a lot of podcasts on him, but if you like to hear the contrast, like I like to hear the other side, we'll get to this, but his main opponent was W.E.B. Du Bois, and W.E.B. Du Bois had a book and actually wrote a chapter on Booker T. I'm like, all right, so he's got some respect if he's his opponent's writing about him.
Yeah.
But I'll get off the pedestal. Ty, if you want to talk about, I know we're going long, but this is for the boys. People can bounce around. I just want to hear about it. This is fun for me. Okay.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Till midnight. So the next prompt is, what were the main challenges and opposition? We might have touched on it, but for Teddy, what were kind of re-summarize or hit some other things? What were the main challenges and opposition?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I did go through those kind of already, but I forgot to mention that he also, like John Hancock, when he was a boy, struggled severely with like asthma and allergies. And it's funny because I could relate to that. I had like pretty severe asthma when I was little, but different, like you said, different. There wasn't quite the medicine that we have, medicine advancements as today. But it was pretty debilitating. But it also was something where his dad kind of encouraged him to just like gut it out a little bit, and where it's kind of where he picked up kind of boxing and stuff and just being like a tougher man, even though he was a boy of privilege. So yeah, there was some illnesses, a lot of ups and downs with the economy. The Spanish-American War, as far as his own ambitions, they were really thwarted mostly by two things. One, the death of his wife and mom on the same day within an hour, and where he was there and held them in his arms as they died, both. And then two, just being kind of contrarian for a Republican, because he wasn't afraid to go after corruption, even within his own party or major capitalists. So it was kind of those two things. Obviously, he still had a phenomenal career, is well known, became the greatest popular vote winningest president in history up to that point when he actually did run for president, which was very important to him because he didn't win an election to become president at first. You can imagine how someone who's ambitious and got it the way that he did, going from VP, that was kind of a looked down upon position at the time, got it from an assassination. It meant a lot to him to actually go out. And he kind of was the first to really start what's like modern day campaigning, like getting out in front of folks and traveling across the state in New York when he ran for governor, and then across the country, just took a train and would talk to every single person, the person driving the train, the waiters, every person like at a restaurant and all that sort of thing. And they didn't know how the elections were going to turn out because he had so many people there. It was like families, and women and children didn't have the right to vote. So it was like, felt good. There's a ton of people there, but his advisors are like, I'd love to have more voters out there. There was men, but there was a lot of women and children too. So, but it obviously all turned out fine for him.
Nice. I think, Grant, you also talked about the challenges and oppositions from the health, and then the kind of the infighting with his protege, you're saying. But if there's anything else, you can touch on that.
One other thing I wanted to mention that he had to face was just challenges with his business. The different acts that that England was enforcing on the colonists. You had the Stamp Act, obviously, and the Sugar Act and the Tea Act. All those things he was influential in getting boycotts going to just say, no, we're not going to do this, and throwing the tea over in the Boston, the Boston Tea Party. And so whenever those happened, he would get guys, the colonists, riled up. They would say, no, we're not taking any imports from England. And those boycotts were very successful because they hurt the England economy, because they were buying imports from England. But when those happened, and that affected international commerce at the time that America had with England and other countries. And so whenever that happened, a lot of business would struggle or go out of business and lose a lot of money. So there were several times where Hancock lost a lot of money. And the book does a good job of, like, it'll say how much money they spent, and then in today's dollars in parentheses. So just the difference in, $300 back then is worth 30,000 or more today. I can't even remember all the numbers, but it's just amazing how, just how much the dollar is, how much things, inflation, obviously, and whatnot. But it's, he had to deal with a lot of business trials and ups and downs, and work through all of that. So he definitely had a lot of challenges in that area.
Yeah, that'd be tough, especially when you're putting a lot of your wealth on the
right
line.
Exactly.
I can't imagine Booker T. Washington had many challenges.
No, he is pretty good. It's pretty smooth sailing after he figured out he was free. He's just like, I'm good. I'm just gonna
smooth
chill.
sailing from here.
Oh man, yeah. Just like to figure out how to even become educated. So this, I'll talk about kind of two challenges. Well, actually, I'll three, because two of them education. One's more like the big challenge that people probably remember him. But first, like education, he found out there was like a teacher in town that would teach at night, but he had to work in the coal mines maybe. But the only way he could get there was he would get to work early or something, or sometime throughout the day. He would physically move the hands on the clock to be 30 minutes earlier than it actually was. Then he would leave so he could make it to class on time to learn. So he eventually got in trouble for that, but he was like, it's worth it. I learned something just because I physically changed the clock.
It's amazing.
And then when he was, I think he was upper teens or maybe like low 20s, he had an opportunity to go to Hampton University. So that was like the university if you were a black person that wanted to get educated. And it was 300 to 500 miles away. And he just walked. He's just like, all right, time to go. He just walked probably took 400 miles, weeks, got to Hampton Institute. Wasn't even a spot for him to get in, and he just waited and kept asking and asking. And then the lady's like, I give you one opportunity, you clean my room. And he was like, yeah, and he's like, fine, I'm gonna clean it. Because before he went to Hampton Institute, this one white lady was like super meticulous, and he's like, teach me everything you know about like being super clean and orderly. And she's like, wow, like I really like that. So she taught him how to be like amazingly orderly and clean.
Wow.
And he cleaned this thing as clean as can be. And the person that like was checking, she's like, no way you clean this on your own. He's like, I did. And then in the book he goes, that like me passing her test was better than any college entrance exam ever. Like,
oh yeah,
I felt like I had won the jackpot because I had walked here, I waited, I got an opportunity.
Good for him.
That's I cleaned the classroom, and because of how detail oriented I was, I got into Hampton University.
Wow.
Then he meets this guy, General Armstrong, who's like the main guy over Hampton University, and that becomes like one of his life mentors, who gets him the recommendation at Tuskegee. So it's just like all these things add up. It's not like he did one thing. It's just like he was persistent and everything. So those were the challenges to kind of like get to that point. As I said, a big opposition was W.E.B. Du Bois. It was a black guy in the North who would they just lived totally different lifestyles. W.E.B. was more politically active, went to kind of grew up in a little bit more affluent family in the North, also went to like a university. So they just had different philosophies. Du Bois was always saying like, you need to get educated. Education is the way to freedom. Booker T's like, our way to freedom is we already have these skill sets. Let's cultivate those skill sets. So they just had a totally different ideology on how to go forward. And those were always infighting, kind of like that. And it's just like, there's not really like one way. There's probably both ways. Both worked for each of them. So they're going to continue down that path. The biggest thing that if you look up the Atlanta Compromise or the Atlanta Exposition, that's the same event, but how it's kind of marketed differently. Booker T went to this big event in Atlanta. I forgot what it was exactly for, but he spoke, and essentially he was really trying to bridge the black and the white race and how they can like coexist. And they say it's a compromise because people that wanted more less segregation or more inclusion just into the community, they didn't think Booker T went far enough. They're like, oh, you kind of said, hey, we can kind of live our separate lives as long as we don't like totally ignore each other. So this is actually a quote. Let me pull it up from that. So he says, in all things that are purely social, we can be as separate as the fingers, yet one as the hand in things economic. So he's saying, hey, if we need to be social and not like really fully integrated, that's fine, but let's like be economic partners. And again, that's a step forward at that point, but people were saying that was not far enough. You kind of still said, hey, segregation's cool. And he's like, well, no, I don't think that's right. But also where we're at, like this, I think is what progress looks like, one step forward. So that's his biggest opposition, is that he just didn't push far enough, or that, he was maybe too easy on the white people that still were okay with segregation. But man, this dude had opposition and challenges left and right.
It's amazing the discernment many of these historical leaders had. Like, you could just be so convicted about an issue that you just bull rush your way through, but he still used some tact, like he could have just got up there and said, we all need to be best friends today. But, it's just not, it wasn't going to happen. And there's writings, because people always want to be like, our founding fathers were slave owners. Well, literally there's writings from George Washington, our very first president, saying that they should be free. And he treated his slaves incredibly kindly and wanted them to be free, but knew if he acted on that now, it would never happen. And it just was not the right time. And so there was some tact to that. That's kind of incredible that even for a man that led that issue that came from slavery was able to have that kind of discernment is pretty amazing.
Yeah, well said.
Let's go to this last one. Let's try to do it in under 10 minutes. So how were you impacted, or just kind of like your personal takeaway?
Yeah, similar to what you were saying, Levi, about Booker T. I was just, well, also just this all wrapping up on the 4th of July, or this last Independence Day weekend, and America's 250th celebration. Extremely motivated to do the best I can for our country, for my family, to give back economically and socially, culturally, and most importantly, spiritually. Just amazing the things that he did despite the challenges that he had. Was very much an adventurous man. It makes me want to be more of a man of adventure, and just open to like new things in the country and the world, and using that to just be a tool in your toolbox to be a man of Renaissance. And so that's really what he was. And just got me hyped, especially military wise too. I'm, in the military and have military goals. And so just the things that he did there and how it helped propel his career, and the way that he was able to serve his men, both in service and after, is super incredible and inspiring.
I would say just,
I'll say real quick on, are you talking, or I was going to say on Teddy, it sounds like if we need to be adventurous, we need to create a men above approach, like adventure, that we can invite people on. That's what we need to do. That'd be fun. But yeah,
I'd like that. That'd be good. We ought to do a 14 or somewhere, or bigger.
bigger. Go for it, Tech.
Yeah, I think just like Ty said, in light of just 250 years is an amazing milestone, and I'm thankful that it's something that we all got to be a part of, and it makes you think in the future. I hope and pray that, Lord willing, we're here for the 275th and the 300th, and my dad still remembers the 200th, and my mom remembers the 200th well. So it gives me a learning about John Hancock just gives me a deeper and greater appreciation for our country's founding. Uh, it was really fun for me to learn about the little details of his life that I never knew about, and so it makes me excited to pass on this kind of information to my children and to educate along with my wife the importance of knowing the history and the truth of what actually happened in our country's history, and to pass that on. And I'm excited to do that with my children, and just to talk about these things, and excited as they get older, as they ask questions, be able to impart this important truth of how our country was started. And I want them to have an appreciation for that, an appreciation for country, and the blessings of liberty that we have and enjoy that. And I think I'm reminded of it every time I go to a grocery store. You look at a grocery store and just here in America, and you've probably seen it just with the FIFA World Cup here in town these past couple of weeks in the country and here at the U.S. Just so many people from different countries saying just what an amazing place America is. And you walk into any grocery store, every aisle is filled from top to bottom with food and different flavors of everything. It's like, it's just kind of jaw dropping. And so I've really tried to make it a point, especially when I'm with my kids, like, this is a gift. Not everybody enjoys this, and this is not normal. So just a greater appreciation for our country, and thankful for all the blessings that we have here.
Yeah, I think that's almost something to do once a year, is like study someone impactful from our history. Like we study people of the faith.
Yeah.
It's like also probably should be doing that of America history, so we appreciate it. And that's not something, I don't think people just naturally appreciate American history unless you actually study it. Otherwise,
Oh yeah,
then it's people are just naturally negative, and that's what gets news clicks is negativity. So you have to seek out the positivity and the goodness of our history to fully appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. It got me. I enjoyed the book so much that I started reading another book that I have that I'd never gotten really. It just kind of motivated me to read another one that I haven't gotten around to starting. It's called The Miracle in Philadelphia, and it's about the Constitutional Convention from May of 1787 to September of 1787. So reading that now, but it's really kicked me into high gear and made me excited, especially with all that's going on. So yeah, I totally agree with you, Levi. I think it's important to study stuff like this on a once or twice a year basis.
For me, I have three things how it impacted. Number one is brush your teeth. So that really was impactful for me. No, Booker T, that was one of his biggest things at Tuskegee. He's like, you're going to have a toothbrush and you're going to brush your teeth daily and you're going to take care of your health. He's like, you need to take care of your body first before you can take care of other things. I'm like, that's a pretty cool thing. I thought that was a cool lesson he passed on. The second one is, I talked about it a lot, is like, I just want to get after it. I don't want to have excuses. I want to find a way and not just say, well, they had it easier, or if I would have been as lucky as them. Like, I can always find someone in a better situation that I wish that was luckier or something, but that's not my situation, and I'm only in my situation. How can I do the best with what I have in front of me? But on the flip side, so much of Booker T, like, he just did things and got it done, but he also gives so much credit. So let's say you are in a situation to be generous. If you are in a position to help people, he gives credit to so many people that are generous and gave him guidance along the way. So if we are in a fortunate position, how can we lift up people that aren't unfortunate? So it's a pull and a push. Like, we need to push ourselves forward And then also, if we're in places to pull people up, we should be doing that, and everyone should be doing that. So it's just not like you just do it on your own. Like, you're always going to need help, but if you're in a place you can help people. It was both ways. Yeah, that's how it impacted me. That was cool.
Good stuff.
Any final words? Should we just go for a second hour? No, we should wrap it up.
Yeah, pretty amazing. I think what you said at the end was impactful about just trying to help people in the place that you're at. I think too many times we think, well, one, many people who are not in a position, or they think they're not in a position to help, maybe entry-level position jobs, or still in school, or even, come from a more indigent community or something. They aren't even trying to pull themselves up. They're trying to pull others down. And so for him to have so many reasons to potentially fall into that and not instead do the opposite is impressive. And two, that you don't have to be like CEO of a company or in a leadership position to help people. You can do it along the way, just as Booker T. Washington did.
Yeah. Start where you are. Where you are. Well, with that, we'll wrap this up. Our next challenge that we're doing is we're doing a prayer walks. So we're walking around our neighborhood or just going for walks, and we're being intentional to pray. We'll talk about that next podcast, or we might have a special little teaser, a special guest next episode. If so, either we'll be talking about our prayer walks or having a special guest. With that, though, I want to say God bless America. God has blessed America. We are proud Americans. We're thankful for everyone who's gone before us to set a foundation, and we want to do our job to continue to carry on that, continue to improve the country, but never forget of what all they've done and they've sacrificed, and to be thankful for all of that. But we try to be men above reproach. We try to be men that love our country and serve our country, even more importantly, serve our families. But thanks for listening in. If you made it this far, you get 10,000 bonus points. We appreciate you listening in. Ty, Grant, I love the conversation. Thanks for doing the
great combo.
This was a good one. This was fun. Absolutely. God bless y'all.